Previously on Rustworld, with a series of unfortunate events and ultimately the death of Sabretooth, the colony looks bleak, yet it's still holding on for its dear life for now. Rudy, a man in black, arrived at the colony. Will this mysterious man be the sign of good things to come, or an omen to this madness? The sun shines at Rudy as he walks by the stony gravels of the lone mountain. Feeling refreshed after a good night's rest, he decided to check the crash landing on the other side of the mountain to scavenge for resources. As he sees the crash site, he immediately found what he was looking for: a human corpse. He drags it while the hot desert air blows upon his direction. As he arrives at the settlement, he notices Itsuki, still out of his mind, took their meal, which contains Sabretooth's remains, and ate it without a care in the world. Rudy sits by the cozy fire and starts butchering the human corpse, feeling disgusted with his actions, but it's a necessary action for survival. He then checks on Becca. Her body craves for goat juice, but there was none, and Rudy needs her to be clean so that they can turn this mess of a colony into a functioning one. Later that day, a beggar arrives at their doorstep to beg some flakes in order to abate the symptoms of his addiction. Rudy abruptly stops cooking to check out the beggar and converse with him, but he had other plans in his mind. He grabs the hands of the beggar with force and restrains them with a sturdy rope. He escorts him to his cell so that he can intimidate him and then enslave him. The beggar felt betrayed and terrified as Rudy initiated his first steps of intimidation. After doing his daily duties, Rudy tends the fields, growing weary as the night falls. A new day starts, and Rudy just woke up. After tending to Becca, Rudy went to Jarl's cell to intimidate him. With Rudy's attempts finally breaking Jarl's mental fortitude, Rudy finally offers him to be a prisoner in this small cell or to be a slave and enjoy freedom, albeit in shackles. He chose the latter. Enjoying his newfound freedom, he slept outside, although uncomfortably, with the critters that crawl on his skin. At least he isn't enclosed on a cell. Such is the taste of freedom. As he woke up the next day, Rudy instructed Jarl to build a wind turbine, a contraption left by Itsu before he went insane. It produces electricity without needing chem fuel, which is a rare material in the Rust worlds. After finishing the contraption, Jarl immediately breaks due to his psychite withdrawal. Rudy tried to snap him out of it. For what good is a slave if he can't work? But he failed, and Jarl still wanders throughout the night, wandering aimlessly in a ruined tomb like a zombie. In the blazing sun, Rudy tried to harvest the rice. He also notices Itsu being afflicted by sensory mechanites. But in the middle of the day, Rudy's guilt haunted him. Butchering humans wasn't the right thing, so he started venting, insulting Jarl for being a useless slave. The insults were heard, but not heeded, for Jarl is also out of his mind. Rudy kept following him, hurling insults in the hot desert. They both wasted their day, walking around aimlessly. Finally, Jarl snaps out of it in the middle of the night and resumed to his slave duties, feeding Becca, for she was malnourished and has almost recovered from the gold juice addiction. Rudy also finished hurling his insults and goes to sleep early in the morning, where they all slept peacefully. Night falls and their work begins. Disrupted by a series of mental outbreaks, they now can finally work properly. Or can they? Jarl snaps yet again, this time with more malicious intent. He tries to murder Becca, shouting from the top of his lungs, which alarmed Rudy and prompted him to rush over their room. Rudy was forced to shoot Jarl in that heated moment. He tries to save him, but due to his lung being perforated, he wasn't able to breathe and expired. Rudy focuses his attention instead to healing Becca, who is groaning from the bruises she received. But it just doesn't stop there. Later that evening, two angry fish and mouse, maddened by the humming of this world, Rudy fought them off one by one and easily won the fight. Surprisingly, he was shocked that the animal multiplies upon death, but are unaffected by the world's humming. The day after, Rudy stares at the fire despite the blazing sun on top of him. He was still contemplating about Jarl's death and was hoping that Itsu would come back to his senses. With no other choice, he chops Jarl's body first so that they will not waste the food, and postpones the harvesting of rice, feeding the human meat to Becca, which was disgusted by the raw cannibalism she is partaking in. With that complaint heard, Rudy instead cooked the human meat into the campfire, sometimes mixing the fish and mouse's meat just to not waste food. During the night, his handheld radio emits static, followed by a distressed voice. He shouted and asked for help. The person gave his exact coordinates. Then the radio falls into static silence. Rudy was unable to call him back. He was tired and needed to go to sleep. His sleep was cut short though, because a trade caravan arrived. He browses the trader's goods, but did not find anything substantial other than the pemmican and the herbal medicine. Then sold the rest of the junk and proceeded to sleep peacefully back in the barracks. The next day, Rudy woke up and ate the pemmican he just bought gleefully. He then went to Becca to feed her the pemmican. At least this pemmican is not made of human meat. At noon, Rudy was harvesting the fields. Despite feeling the heat of the sun, Rudy perseveres through it, ensuring that the rice was properly harvested, and still was going at it until nighttime falls, where he went to sleep. Becca, for the first time, is able to stand up. She was famished and proceeded to consume the raw rice, but she snapped and her mind was clouded. She slammed the door wide open, causing Rudy to wake up abruptly. With Rudy's reflexes, he hits Becca with a club, and Becca crumbled from the blow, her pain amplified by the withdrawal. She groaned softly as Rudy carried her to the bed spot, and both went to sleep soundly throughout the night. As morning arrives, Becca tried to stand up yet again, but stumbled across the way. Rudy once again carried her to the same bed spot and fed her properly. Becca was thankful enough despite being a mess earlier, yet she tries to stand up again, this time washing her hands. She then eats the raw rice, then crumpled once again. After rescuing her, Rudy instead shifted his effort to constructing, to monitor Rebecca's situation closely. In the nighttime, They had a peaceful rest, despite the room was sweltering hot. At least, it's a moment of respite in this trying time. With Rebecca almost being clean, Rudy had to focus on battling her malnutrition so that she has the strength to overcome her addiction. One final push is all that is needed, and she needs his support now than ever. Rudy knows this and is still working on the walls, only one shout away if Becca ever needs assistance. Later that day, a person begs to let them join the colony. Despite the suspicion, Rudy accepts. After all, why deny an extra pair of hands? With a woman in white by their side, this colony's future may be secured. Or is it?